8:14 p.m. Saint-Ardent detonated with alarms as paramedics tore through the doors with a dying SEAL sniper. Blood trailing in a line that looked like a battlefield dragged into fluorescent light. 20 doctors surged, barking protocols, scrambling with instruments, shouting orders over his failing vitals until the sniper snapped awake. Not confused, not sedated, trained. His gaze hunted shadows, oxygen mask torn away, hand reaching for a rifle that wasn't there. "Do not touch me," he roared, kicking so hard the gurney slammed into steel railings. Security froze. Doctors backed off. This wasn't panic. This was combat instinct slamming into civilian chaos. Then, the smallest figure in the room stepped forward. Nurse Ava Rios. She shouldn't have approached him, but when she leaned beside his blood-slick ear and whispered her call sign, a name that died in classified files long before she wore hospital shoes. Iron Wolf. The sniper froze mid-rage, breath shaking, voice cracking. "Ma'am, how are you still alive?" And in one heartbeat, the ER learned the quiet nurse they dismissed had once been the SEAL medic who walked the Gulf sands with 30 confirmed kills. Before we start, drop a quick comment. Never judge. Hit subscribe if you believe quiet heroes deserve to be seen. It's free and it keeps these stories alive. 9:32 p.m. Mercy Heights Emergency Department erupted like a breach under flood illumination. Paramedics barreled in with a stretcher, leaving a trail of crimson behind it. Thick, steady, too dark for comfort. The man on it wasn't just injured. He was demolished. Flank ripped, ribs groaning with each gasp. Combat equipment cut open in a hurry that didn't save duration. Only dignity. 17 physicians closed in at once. Prepare trauma section. Move. We require sedation. Torso imaging. Compressions ready. The SEAL marksman came awake mid-sentence. Not groggy, not confused, trained. His limbs shot up, tearing the oxygen tube, gaze flaring so wild and precise, the nearest surgeon stumbled back like he'd witnessed a scope pointed at him. "Don't touch me," he stated, tone deep enough to shake steel trays. "Not one of you." The screen screamed in protest. One intravenous pole tipped, a resident's pen clattered to tile. He wasn't resisting treatment. He was resisting surrender. A security officer reached for restraints. "No!" the attending snapped. "We're executing this clean and controlled." The marksman twisted so hard against the rails that the bed jerked an inch. "You strap me down, I'm gone," he warned. "I will crawl out of here bleeding." They all froze. Not because he was stronger, but because the expression in his gaze stated he'd already executed it before. A few steps back, a young caregiver paused, tray in hand. Maya Chen, evening shift, overlooked, calm in a storm that never learned her name. The emergency department called her rookie like it was her uniform. She didn't examine the bellowing surgeons. She examined him. Crimson soaked through dressings along his right flank, creeping upward with each laboured gasp. The pattern wasn't chaotic. It radiated in angles. Maya's gaze narrowed almost imperceptibly, reading geometry, not gore. "Sir, you're in a safe facility." The chief critical care surgeon attempted again. "We require access. You don't possess clearance." The marksman snapped. "Retreat." Maya stepped forward. It was small, silent, almost unnoticeable except to him. "Chen, out," the attending barked. "This is not your situation. He's combative and you are not cleared to be." She maintained walking. Physicians stared at her like she'd malfunctioned. The marksman tracked her approach, breathing hitched, muscles tightening again. "No closer. I don't comprehend who you individuals are." Maya didn't flinch. No apology, no bravado. She positioned the tray down beside the bed and leaned in until only he could hear her. 6 quiet syllables, spoken like recollection rather than command, rolled past her lips. His entire body stilled, not softened, not surrendered, stilled. His jaw trembled once, the only crack in a fortress of training. "That can't be you," a resident murmured behind a gloved hand. Did he just recognize her? No one answered because no one could. Maya didn't explain, didn't confirm, didn't deny. Her expression didn't shift so much as a millimeter. Only her gaze carried something ancient. Lie back, she murmured. You're bleeding faster than they think. He stared at her like he'd witnessed a ghost inside a fluorescent space. You don't understand, he murmured. This wasn't random. They were waiting on the rooftop. Maya paused with the gauze halfway lifted. She hadn't flinched when he raged, but she flinched now. How specific? She asked quietly. Exact nest, he rasped. Exact duration. Exact angle. Someone burned my hide before we even cleared communications. A few physicians exchanged glances. Confusion, not comprehension. But Maya didn't appear confused. She appeared like she'd just swallowed a history. Existence whole. The attending stepped forward, tone rising. Nurse Chen, retreat. This is beyond your. Maya peeled back the soaked bandage. She didn't gasp. She didn't bellow. She went very, very still. Pieces spread. Thoracic hinge bruising. Blowback that didn't fan. It focused. Not enemy fire. Not street blast. Not even explosive device chaos. A shaped charge rooftop positioned, meant for one nest and one nest only. The marksman watched her expression. You've witnessed that pattern, he stated quietly. Haven't you? She didn't answer. One pulse, two across the glass. Two men in suits appeared. No badges, no scrubs, no rush. The variety of men who watched, not helped. Maya's throat tightened. Scan him, one surgeon insisted behind her. We require imaging now. You scan too deeply without decompressing, she murmured, gaze still on the injury. And you collapse the lung you're attempting to rescue. Heads turned, brows lifted. Nobody moved. How do you comprehend that? A resident murmured. Maya didn't blink. The same manner he comprehends I'm not here to restrain him. The marksman's gaze softened just a fraction. Not relief, not trust, but recognition of a tone he once followed through smoke. He swallowed hard. They informed me the nest was safe. Coordinates were sealed. Maya held his gaze, hers dark and agonizingly clear. They weren't sealed, she stated. They were sold. His breathing broke. Screens spiked. The surgeons surged. Grant him space, Maya snapped. It wasn't volume that halted them. It was certainty. The suits behind the glass lifted phones to their ears simultaneously. Overhead, the speakers crackled. East Side lockdown initiated. Military liaison inbound. The attending spun toward the corridor. What? Why? Who commanded? The marksman reached for Maya's wrist, grip shaking, tone raw. They're not here for me. She didn't need to ask who they were here for because she already comprehended. The emergency department illumination hummed overhead. Screens filled the hush, and for the first occasion since he'd been dragged through the automatic entrance, the SEAL halted, resisting. Not for sedatives, not for surgeons, not for authority, for her. Maya retreated, pulse steady, gaze cutting once more to the injury that belonged to a rooftop betrayal she'd prayed she'd never witness again. She didn't murmur. She didn't comfort. She stated the only words that mattered. We require to move rapidly before the ones watching decide he doesn't depart this medical center. The space froze. The suit stepped closer, and the marksman, stabilized only by her tone, murmured the truth she'd attempted to bury. They burned my nest the same manner they burned yours. 9:37 p.m. turned into a corridor of held breathing. The suits outside the trauma glass didn't blink, didn't shift, didn't touch the entrance handle. They just watched Maya. Not the man bleeding out, not the surgeons, her. Inside, the space had separated into two varieties of individuals. The ones who still believed this was a standard trauma situation, and the ones who just realized it wasn't. The attending finally spoke, tone clipped to hide the tremor. Chen, enough. Retreat. Whatever personal connection he thinks he possesses to you, it doesn't change protocol. Maya didn't move. The marksman attempted to adjust, but even the inch of motion sent a grimace across his jaw, crimson seeping through fresh gauze. He wasn't resisting now, but the tension in his muscles still lived like recollection. Elbows tucked, ribs guarded, throat tight for a silent kill command. They timed it, he stated softly, gaze fixed on Maya. Extraction window changed at the final minute. Only 5 individuals possessed that update. A murmur rippled behind her. The surgeons weren't trained for this variety of terror, not of death, but of intentional death. Targeted ruin. Maya didn't glance up at them. Her consciousness didn't require charts or imaging. It possessed patterns etched into it from a conflict she never discussed. "Who changed it?" she asked, tone steady. He swallowed, perspiration sliding down his temple. "Home base? Someone high? Someone who comprehended I trusted rooftop nests more than convoys?" Maya's pulse flickered. Not panic, but recognition. He hadn't been struck because he broke formation. He'd been struck because formation broke him. The attending cleared his throat sharply. "Enough. We require scans before we start inventing conspiracy." "No," Maya stated. "Not loud, just final." Residents stared, not at her authority, but at the manner she stated it without apology. That word from her mouth didn't sound like defiance. It sounded like fact. "You scan," she continued, "and his right lung collapses against the pressure. His pleural space is too tight from the blast geometry. He requires decompression first, imaging second." The attending blinked. "Blast geometry? Where exactly were you trained?" His tone perished when Maya removed her gloves and reached for fresh ones. Calm, surgical, precise. She wasn't emotional. She wasn't rattled. She was operating from instinct older than this medical center. The marksman's gaze didn't depart her. He wasn't watching a caregiver. He was watching someone who had once walked rooftops beside him, comprehended angles humans shouldn't survive, recognized placement not as injury, but as intention. The surgeon nearest her lowered his tone. "Chen, are you stating this was deliberate sabotage?" Maya didn't answer. She didn't require to. Her silence was the answer. She turned the marksman's body just enough to re-expose the injury's edge. Physicians leaned in, anticipating carnage. Instead, they witnessed something worse. Clean fragmentation. Too clean. A blast that didn't scatter and it guided. No chaos, no panic, no warning. A professional burn. The marksman's tone came out raw, almost ashamed. "If I hadn't moved when I executed, they'd have taken my head. That charge wasn't built to scare me off the nest. It was built to erase it." A caregiver gasped. Someone dropped a pen. The suits outside didn't move. Maya spoke only to him. "How did they comprehend where you'd be?" He didn't blink. "I informed you only 5 individuals. Only 5 possessed the update." Maya's jaw locked slightly. He was listing the same number she once possessed back when there were 5, then 4, then 3, then a rooftop that never granted all of them back. Before another word could land, screens shrieked, pulse rate climbing rapidly, oxygen dipping, pressure dropping in a manner that appeared wild but wasn't. This wasn't panic. This was his body remembering the blast before his consciousness did. A resident rushed for the sedative tray. "No!" the marksman barked, tone laced with terror. Maya lifted a hand, a quiet, unspoken signal. "Don't touch him." The space obeyed. The attending stared. "You can't permit a combative casualty dictate care. He's not combative." Maya stated he's responding to precision trauma. "You sedate him now, you trigger tactile flash, and you'll lose him to the recollection, not the injury." She pressed 2 digits lightly against the marksman's shoulder. Not pressure, not restraint, presence. His breathing slowed by degrees. The alarm still beeped erratically, but the man beneath them unclenched. Everyone else finally witnessed it. He wasn't afraid of perishing. He was afraid of disappearing the same manner the rooftop attempted to take him. The The suits outside finally moved, one lifting a phone, the other lowering blinds halfway. The glass reflected their expressions, but Maya didn't turn. She checked the bleed again. Slow, methodical, her expression not horrified. Confirmed. The exact pattern she prayed she'd never witness again. "Chen," the attending stated, tone quiet now. "You're not just an evening caregiver, are you?" Maya didn't respond. The marksman did. She's the one they never debriefed, the only one who walked out when the remainder of us didn't. The space didn't gasp this occasion. They just went still. Maya positioned her jaw and finally examined the attending. "Scans in 15 minutes, she stated. Torso tube first, stabilized lung, then imaging, and only when his vitals can tolerate supine." The attending nodded without arguing, not because he understood, but because her certainty was louder than his training. The marksman exhaled, gaze softening only toward her. "Thank you," he murmured, tone fraying. Maya didn't blink. "Don't thank me," she stated. "Just stay awake." His gaze flicked again toward the blinds where the suit still stood. "They'll ask for me," he murmured. "They always ask for the survivor." Maya froze. Then, just for a pulse, she permitted truth display beneath the scrubs. "No," she stated softly. "This occasion, they came for me." Every physician in the space felt the temperature drop. The blinds finished closing. The corridor went silent, and the seals on whatever history she carried cracked just enough to permit the next detail bleed. "If you're still here, comment. Never judge." 9:42 p.m. turned the trauma section into a conflict space dressed in medical center linen. The blinds were now fully closed, sealing out the corridor, sealing in the truth none of them were ready for. The suits outside didn't depart. Their silhouettes held position, still patient, predatory. Inside, every physician waited for Maya to move because, somehow, she'd become gravity, not by force, but by comprehending. The marksman's breathing roughened again. Shallow returns, pressure building beneath bone and bandage. His digits tightened around the rail. Not panic, not resistance, but readiness. The variety soldiers possess right before the second blast strikes. Maya moved rapidly, methodical, pulling the torso kit close. The attending stepped toward her, half protest, half surrender. "Chen, if you're incorrect, then he perishes slower," she stated, calm, surgical, too certain for doubt. The resident nearest them swallowed hard and adjusted the suction tube. The entire space held the atmosphere like an unfused charge. Maya cleaned the site, antiseptic sweep over fractured ribs and bruised tissue. The pattern of the injury informed more than scans ever could. Right thoracic cavity, blast lung, hemispheric fragmentation, directed explosive. Someone desired him removed clean. The marksman met her gaze, jaw tight. They burned the nest. They desired the body to appear like collapse, not execution. Maya's expression displayed nothing, but deep inside, something ancient and feral shifted. The recollection of a stairwell that caved inward, of teammates whose names were scrubbed not from valor lists, but from existence. She positioned the needle. He didn't flinch. He braced like he'd been here before. "On my count," she murmured. "No," he rasped. "On yours. I follow your tone." The physicians exchanged glances. Confusion or discomfort, but not disbelief anymore. Not after the pattern. Not after the suits. Not after the blackout blinds. Maya inserted the needle clean. Controlled. A rush of trapped atmosphere hissed from the pleural cavity. Pressure long enough contained shattering into release. The marksman inhaled sharply. Not agony, relief. A lung finally permitted to expand. His vitals climbed with agonizing caution, like a meter remembering what survival feels like. "He's stabilizing," a resident breathed. Maya didn't smile, didn't sag, didn't display triumph. She adjusted oxygen flow, tone quiet. "He's not safe. He's just breathing." The attending finally asked the question, waiting on everyone's tongue. How did you comprehend that placement? Maya didn't glance up. You don't learn blast patterns from textbooks, one of the younger surgeons murmured. Then, where? The marksman answered for her. Rooftops, same as mine, same angle, same signature. All heads turned. Maya didn't confirm, she didn't deny, she only changed gloves and checked the drain output, swinging the stretcher illumination. So, the injury sat under truth. Before anyone could speak again, the intercom crackled. Military liaison entering East Section. All personnel remain in current stations. Maya's gaze flicked to the blinds. The suits still hadn't moved. They were waiting, but not for the casualty. They'd comprehended he'd survived the blast long before they received the alert. They were waiting for her. The marksman witnessed it too. They'll tear this place apart to reach you. Maya removed a bloodied pad. Tone a murmur lost beneath equipment hum. They already executed, just not this building. The words settled like dust after detonation. A caregiver dropped a clamp. No one stooped to retrieve it. The attending paced toward the entrance, tension riding his spine. I desire answers. Who authorized? What are they executing here? This is a medical center. Maya didn't react. You won't receive answers. You'll receive classification. The space silenced again because her tone didn't leave space for debate. It was resignation, not terror, not badge pride, just the understanding that once conflict touches fluorescent tile, democracy departs through the service elevator. The marksman winced, tone tightening. Did they pull you back in? Maya taped the tubing, digits steady in a manner her pulse was not. No one pulls me anywhere anymore. I departed quietly. He stared at her like that sentence was worse than any injury. You walked out of a black file. They don't permit ghosts walk. She met his gaze with something nearly human. They executed once. He swallowed hard and they regret it. Maya turned away from the bed, then the only moment of retreat since she approached him. She braced her hands on the counter, breathing shallow, shoulders tight. The recollection wasn't of gunfire or crimson or rooftop collapse. It was of silence afterward, not mourning, eraser. The attending attempted again, words gentler now. Chen, you don't need to. Whatever occurred, you're here now. You're safe. Maya exhaled through her nose. Slow. You don't receive hunted because you're safe. The overhead illumination buzzed in the quiet. The marksman shifted despite the agony, pulling her attention back to him. You didn't answer me, he murmured. Who sold the nest? Maya's jaw worked once, a muscle ticking beneath flesh. She leaned back over the injury, re-evaluating drain output, not making eye contact. Don't ask questions you aren't cleared to hear, she murmured. Not in this space. His breathing slowed, not calming, but accepting. This wasn't terror. This was experience. He'd witnessed the expression in her gaze before, in the expressions of men informed they weren't soldiers anymore, but shadows of classified cleanup. Before she retreated fully, alarms spiked again. Not catastrophic, but insistent. Maya glanced up, pulse rate climbing in rhythm, not panic. Something else. Position change coming, she muttered. Flash feedback. The marksman's hand shot out, gripping the rail, knuckles bone white. It's the illumination. He breathed, gaze unfocused. The manner it flickers, the rooftop possessed that same. He didn't finish. The blinds moved. They didn't open fully. Just an inch, enough to display the corridor. Enough to display the third suit now beside the first two. Not two watchers, three. And the third wasn't examining the marksman. He was examining Maya, the manner a man studies a classified file redacted down to its bones. The marksman followed her gaze, tone a murmur of threat, not terror. They didn't send liaison for me. Maya turned away from the glass, focusing on vitals she'd already stabilized because they were safer than truth. They never were. The attending took a step back, finally understanding the hierarchy of tonight. Medicine didn't own this space. The medical center didn't either. Whatever Maya had walked away from in the desert corridors, rooftop fire, extraction fog, had discovered her here between antiseptic and paperwork. The marksman closed his gaze just enough to hide the tremor. "I won't permit them take you." Maya didn't soften, didn't blink, didn't permit comfort take shape in her tone. "It's not your decision and not your battle." He opened his gaze again, the steel returning. "It is if they burned me just to bring you out." Maya froze halfway through a dressing change. She didn't examine him, but she didn't move either because he was correct. They hadn't targeted him to erase him. They'd targeted him to reveal her. The blinds shifted another inch, and the third suit lifted a badge. Unmarked, uncolour-coded. Authority without insignia. The variety that doesn't ask. The variety that arrives. The blinds rose a final inch. Not enough to open the existence, only enough to prove it was already inside. 3 suits now, all identical, all still. The nearest surgeon backed away from the stretcher, as if distance might make him unimportant. The resident, who'd murmured earlier, now stood with limbs tight across his torso, silently begging not to be noticed. Caregivers adjusted carts with no intention of touching them. The attending swallowed, the sound audible over the pulse screen. Maya didn't turn. She tightened the torso seal, checked the tube, read the output, every motion deliberate, every second borrowed. She had witnessed spaces like this before, not medical centres. Debrief stations dressed as triage tents, command spaces pretending to be rescue. The marksman, pale but breathing with newfound depth, tracked her hands with unwavering focus. "You can still walk away," he murmured. She didn't answer because he was incorrect and they both comprehended it. The entrance to the trauma section clicked. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a click. Enough to end denial. The third suit stepped inside. No announcement, no badge flash, no clearance level named. His shoes were polished, too clean for an east section that had just held death by inches. He nodded once to the attending. Respect, not greeting, and then to Maya. Chen. Maya didn't examine him. Not yet. She removed bloodied gloves, disposed of them carefully, the manner someone disposes of evidence. "You shouldn't be here," she stated. "On the contrary," the man answered, tone calm. "This is the safest conceivable place for you for the moment. It wasn't a threat, which made it worse." The marksman pushed himself higher despite the tubing. She maintained me breathing. "You desire a medal handed to someone? Grant it to her, if you came for me." "We didn't," the man stated. He stated it gently, like explaining weather. Maya finally faced him. "Then, state it," she breathed. "State why." He studied her expression, searching for a crack. There wasn't one. She'd closed those fault lines years ago. "You departed a program without debrief," he stated. "Without exit interview, without reintegration, without trace. We permitted it stand. We did not pursue you. We honoured your request for removal." "Request," she repeated, as if tasting rust. "You earned it," he replied until the signature reappeared. The space thickened, atmosphere too heavy to breathe. Fluorescent hum suddenly predatory. The marksman's tone sharpened. "She didn't reappear. You flushed her by burning a nest." The suit didn't blink. "Your extraction breach was unfortunate," he stated to the marksman, "but necessary." The surgeons flinched, security froze. Maya closed her gaze. "You staged a blast," the marksman growled. "You made it appear like enemy fire. We made it appear like conflict." The suit corrected. "Conflict is easier to explain than reclamation." The marksman attempted to sit upright, too rapidly, too hard. Agony folded him, breathing, stuttering, screens, objecting. Maya steadied him, palm against shoulder, touch careful, but grounding. "Easy," she murmured. He deflated, not for her hand, but for her tone. The man in the suit permitted the moment hang before speaking again. "The call sign you used," he stated to Maya, "was believed retired. His reaction confirms it remains active, which means you remain active whether you desire it or not." She shook her head, slow, controlled. I buried that name. And yet, he replied, it answered tonight. A recollection flashed behind her gaze, dust in her throat, rooftop collapsing. 3 men she couldn't drag out because command commanded her to depart the breathing ahead of the dying. The blast sound that didn't echo but folded in. The marksman witnessed it on her expression and spoke before she could fall back into it. She didn't come here to disappear. She came here because disappearing was the only manner the remainder of us walked home. A flicker, almost pity, crossed the suit's expression. You were never meant to heal in civilian cloth, he stated. You were meant to consult, train, advise, stay behind glass. Not here, not unlisted. Maya's tone steadied into steel. I stayed where no one asked me to bury another man breathing. The attending blinked hard at that, as though realizing at last that every shift she clocked in was a quiet act of resistance. The suit stepped forward, not hostile, not demanding, but inevitable. You are reinstated under advisory designation Shadow. No, Maya snapped the single sharp sound, razor clean. You don't use that name here. The marksman forced a breathing knuckles white around the rail. You positioned me up, he stated to the suit. You injured me to draw her out. We comprehended blast lung would not kill you, the suit replied. We comprehended she would answer. We required confirmation she still existed. Maya's torso tightened. Not panic, not shock, but the variety of betrayal delivered by individuals who speak in strategy instead of crimson. You could have asked, she stated. We executed, he replied. You didn't answer. You sent silence, she murmured. He nodded. Because silence is the only thing operatives respond to. The marksman examined between them, realization landing cold. This wasn't extraction, he muttered. This was recall. Maya turned away, hands braced on the counter, shoulders locked. I won't return. You don't require to, the suit stated. Your presence here is enough. Your name woke the deceased tonight. That is all command desired to confirm. She examined him then, gaze glassed but unbroken. And if I refuse alignment, he smiled without warmth. Then you continue as you are. As long as you remain quiet, as long as you execute, not speak, what you comprehend, as long as you stay exactly who you pretended to be when you positioned on those scrubs. The marksman shook his head. She is not a ghost for your filing cabinet. She is, the suit countered softly, the reason you're breathing. Silence, heavy, unmoving, grief-shaped. Maya touched the marksman's wrist gently, grounding him in a manner no sedative could. You didn't perish on that rooftop, she murmured. Neither did you, he answered, a caregiver behind them, exhaled a breathing she'd been holding for minutes. The suit retreated. You are both cleared, he stated. For now, your reports remain sealed. This facility will never comprehend the depth of what walked through its entrance tonight. He paused at the threshold. It is better that manner. When he departed, the space didn't exhale, it just shifted back into gravity. Maya checked vitals again, hand steady, pulse not. The marksman watched her, not in awe, not in debt, but in something deeper, recognition unburied. Thank you, he stated, for the lung, for coming back to an existence that didn't deserve you. She almost smiled. Almost. You deserved breathing, she stated. That was enough. He permitted his gaze close, not from sedation, not from defeat, but from safety, real safety, the variety no agency could offer. Maya took 1 step back, then 2. She reached the doorway. The personnel parted. No applause, no spoken respect, just space finally granted to someone they never really witnessed. She paused, hand on the frame, pulse finally slowing into the body she'd borrowed to survive this long. When she examined back, it wasn't at the suits or the surgeons. It was at the man she'd once patched under night vision and unmarked sky. If you believe someone like him deserves more than being used, she murmured, tone cracking just once, then remember, someone like me doesn't disappear because you forget. She stepped out, illumination buzzed, screen steadied. Conflict tucked itself back into the veins of a quiet caregiver's existence. If this story moved you even a little, please subscribe. Not for numbers, not for algorithm, for the silent ones who served, rescued, and vanished so others didn't need to. Drop a comment. Never judge.